Welcome back to part 2 of Unsolved and Unexplained Mysteries, where the stranger things get, the closer we look. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story that twists your brain and pokes at your beliefs. If this kind of mystery pulls at your curiosity, or even unsettles you a little, drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Especially this one, because today's story isn't just strange. It messes with the very idea of what it means to live, to die, and to come back. And hey, if you've ever looked at someone and sworn you've met them before, even though you know you haven't, then yeah, this one's going to hit differently. Let's talk about the Pollock twins. It's a case that has haunted psychologists, fascinated believers in reincarnation, and kept skeptics up at night for decades. And by the end of this, you'll be wondering if memories can really travel through lifetimes, or if something even weirder is at play. Let's rewind to 1957, in a quiet town called Hexham in Northumberland, England. A peaceful place where everyone pretty much knows everyone else, and life moves at the kind of slow, familiar pace that makes tragedies feel even heavier when they hit. That spring, something terrible happened. Two young sisters, Joanna, age 11, and Jacqueline, age 6, were walking to church with a friend when they were struck and killed by a car. The driver, a woman under the influence of heavy medication, had apparently lost her children in a custody battle and was not in a sound mental state. She deliberately swerved off the road, killing all 3 children instantly. The grief was unimaginable. Their parents, John and Florence Pollock, were devastated. These weren't just their daughters, they were the heart of their home. And just like that, they were gone. But this isn't where the story ends. This is where things start to get weird. A year later, Florence found out she was pregnant again. John, the father, became convinced, deep in his gut, that his daughters would return. Not metaphorically, not as a way to process grief. Literally, he believed that Joanna and Jacqueline would somehow come back to them. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The doctors told them they were having one baby, just one heartbeat, one fetus. But on October 4th, 1958, Florence gave birth to identical twin girls, Jennifer and Jillian. Identical, but not quite. Jillian, the older twin by 10 minutes, resembled Joanna in both facial structure and personality. Jennifer, the younger, had a small birthmark on her waist, exactly like Jacqueline had. She also had a scar-like mark across her forehead that mirrored Jacqueline's real scar from a fall she had as a toddler. Already, the similarities were eerie, but it didn't stop there. By the time the twins were 3, they started to talk about things they shouldn't have known. Places they'd never visited, people they'd never met. When the family moved back to Hexham, the twins recognized landmarks and neighborhoods from their sisters' lives. They pointed out the school their sisters had gone to, even though they had never attended it. They identified the family's old toys, correctly calling them by names only Joanna and Jacqueline had used. And one time, their mother overheard them playing a game where one of them reenacted the car accident. Jennifer lay on the floor with her head in Jillian's lap and said, "The blood's coming out of my eyes. That's where the car hit me." Florence was horrified. Another time, a family friend visited and the twins called her by name, despite never having met her before. And their personalities? Also strangely familiar. Jillian was protective and motherly, like Joanna. Jennifer was more dependent, like Jacqueline. Despite being identical twins, their personalities seemed lifted straight out of their older sisters' lives. Even as they grew older, the girls had recurring nightmares about being hit by a car, and they had an intense fear of cars in general, something that eased only as they reached age 5. The same age Jacqueline was when she died. Coincidence? Collective family trauma showing up in subtle ways? Or something else? Now, let's be real. Reincarnation isn't exactly in your average science textbook. But this case caught the attention of Dr. Ian Stevenson, a respected psychiatrist from the University of Virginia who spent his career studying reincarnation in children. He interviewed the Pollock family extensively. What impressed him wasn't just the twins' memories or birthmarks. It was the fact that their parents hadn't been pushing the reincarnation theory. In fact, Florence was deeply uncomfortable with the idea. She was a devout Catholic and didn't believe in reincarnation. This wasn't about a grieving mother projecting old memories onto new children. Stevenson ultimately listed the Pollock twins as one of the most compelling cases in his database. But even he admitted, it's not proof, just powerful suggestion. So what do you think? Are we looking at reincarnation? Genetic memory? Some strange trauma echoing through the family? By age 7, the twins' memories of Joanna and Jacqueline began to fade. They stopped talking about the accident. They stopped recognizing places. And eventually, they lived what seemed like ordinary lives. Which raises a whole new question. If these memories were real, why did they vanish? Some people believe that past life memories in children fade because they're tied to early brain development. Others think we're all born remembering something else, and most of us just forget as we get older. Or maybe, we never forget. Maybe we just stop recognizing the echoes. The Pollock twins are still alive today, though they've mostly kept quiet about their early years. Their story remains one of the most cited examples in reincarnation research, but there's no answer. No neat bow, just questions. So, what do you believe? Drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you've ever experienced something strange yourself. Déjà vu? Vivid dreams of another life? Unexplainable connections to a place you've never been? And if you're into unraveling the eerie, the haunting, and the unexplained, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. You never know whose story might be the missing piece to one of these puzzles. Because sometimes, the most unbelievable things feel a little too real. The Mothman of Point Pleasant. A winged creature with glowing red eyes terrorizes a small town before a bridge collapses. Was it a warning or a supernatural omen? We're heading to a small town in West Virginia, Point Pleasant, a place you probably wouldn't have heard of if it weren't for a creature that may or may not be real, but still manages to terrify people almost 60 years later. This is the story of the Mothman, a winged, red-eyed figure that showed up, scared the life out of everyone, and then disappeared right before tragedy struck. So let's go there. Let's talk about the monster that might have come to warn us. Or maybe, just to watch. The first major sighting came on November 15, 1966. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scoberry, and Steve and Mary Millette, were driving late at night near an old World War II munitions site known as the TNT area, just outside Point Pleasant. They weren't out ghost hunting. They weren't looking for anything weird. They were just driving. But then, they saw it. Hovering near the road was a humanoid figure, about 7 feet tall, with massive wings and glowing red eyes. Not shining like animal eyes reflecting light. No, this was like headlights. Like burning coals. And then, it started to fly. Not flap its wings like a bird. It lifted off vertically, silently, and chased their car down the road at speeds up to 100 miles per hour. The couple sped away, terrified, and made it back to town. They went straight to the police. Now, small towns don't take kindly to hoaxes or hysteria. But the cops knew these kids. And they were shaken, pale, genuinely scared. So the police went back out with them, hoping to prove it was just nerves. They didn't find the creature, but they saw something else. Strange disturbances. Static interference on radios. Weird screeching noises. And soon, more people started seeing it. Over the next 13 months, the sightings kept piling up. A man said he saw the creature standing in a field near his house. It took off straight into the air, wings spread wide. A group of volunteer firefighters saw a large bird with red eyes. A dog went missing, only to be found later, torn apart. People described the same thing again and again. Man-shaped but not human. Giant wings, stretching 10 to 15 feet across. Eyes that glowed, even in the dark. And a feeling. A deep, unnatural fear that hit you in the chest like cold air from inside a tomb. But then came the men in black. Yes, literally. People started reporting visits from strange men in black suits, asking questions about the sightings, telling them not to talk. Their voices were odd, their behavior even stranger. Some witnesses said they didn't even seem human. Now we've entered conspiracy territory, and things were about to hit a boiling point. On December 15, 1967, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, was packed with Christmas traffic when, without warning, it collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people died. To this day, the official explanation is a structural failure. A single eye-bar in the suspension system snapped, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. Logical, mechanical, understandable. But here's the thing. After that day, Mothman vanished. No more sightings. No more glowing eyes. No more winged figure in the sky. For some people, it wasn't a coincidence. The Mothman, they say, wasn't a monster. It was a warning, a harbinger of doom. Maybe even trying to stop it. Others think it was feeding on fear, showing up right before disaster to soak up the chaos. Or maybe, and this chills me the most, it wasn't warning anyone. It was just watching. Point Pleasant has a dark past that adds another eerie layer. In the 1700s, the town was the site of a brutal battle between American settlers and Shawnee Native Americans. According to legend, Chief Cornstalk, a prominent leader, was betrayed and murdered by settlers under a flag of truce. Before he died, he supposedly placed a curse on the land. A curse that would bring misery and misfortune to Point Pleasant for centuries. So some locals say Mothman isn't just a random cryptid. It's part of that curse. A spirit of vengeance or sorrow that rises when death is near. And listen, whether you believe in curses or not, the timeline is creepy. After the bridge collapsed, Point Pleasant never fully recovered. The economy, the population, the spirit of the place, it all changed. Now, the Mothman legend has grown way beyond West Virginia. There are books, documentaries, even a Hollywood film, The Mothman Prophesies, starring Richard Gere. The town now hosts an annual Mothman festival, and there's even a statue right in the heart of Point Pleasant. You can take a selfie with glowing red eyes if you're into that sort of thing. And the sightings? They didn't stop completely. Reports of similar creatures have popped up in Chicago, Russia, and even near Chernobyl before the nuclear disaster. Always the same description. Always before something goes wrong. Of course, skeptics have their theories. Some say it was just a large owl or crane, distorted by headlights in the dark. Others think mass hysteria took hold. A town scared into seeing what it expected to see. But mass hysteria doesn't usually chase cars at 100 miles an hour, or leave behind dead dogs, or vanish after a disaster. So, what are we dealing with? Is the Mothman a cryptid, a flesh and blood creature hiding in remote places? A supernatural omen sent to warn us of tragedy? Or something even darker, even more ancient? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear them. Especially if you're from West Virginia or have your own hometown legends. These things matter more than we think. They say something about the places we come from, the fears we carry, and the things we hope aren't real. And remember to like, subscribe, and share if you're into diving deep into the unexplained. There's a whole world out there that refuses to make sense, and we're just getting started. Stick around for the next mystery. It gets even weirder. The time-slipping travelers. Real-life accounts of people who claim they accidentally stepped into the past or future, only to return with no proof, just eerie memories. Now, let's step into something really strange. Not ghosts, not UFOs, not even monsters. We're talking about people who swear, absolutely swear, they accidentally slipped through time. Not science fiction, not dreams, actual people, real accounts, and they came back changed. So buckle in, because this one's a mind-bender. Our first story comes from France, but it doesn't involve wine or baguettes. In 1901, two British women, Charlotte and Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, went on a trip to the Palace of Versailles. You know, the famous one where Marie Antoinette used to live before the French Revolution chopped off some heads. So they're walking the palace grounds, just tourists exploring history. But suddenly, something shifts. The air feels heavy. The scenery looks different. The people around them aren't other tourists anymore. They're dressed in 18th century clothing. One of the women swears she saw Marie Antoinette herself, sketching under a tree. It wasn't a costume party. And this wasn't a reenactment. They hadn't signed up for some immersive experience. When they later retraced their steps, same spot, same path, none of it looked the same. No old buildings, no eerie atmosphere, no woman sketching by the trees. They believed they'd somehow walked straight into the year 1789, the very edge of the French Revolution. Now, skeptics have tried to explain it away: hallucination, misremembering, wishful thinking. But here's the thing: the women were academics. Mobley was a college principal, not the kind to invent fairy tales. They wrote a whole book about it called An Adventure, and they stuck to their story until they died. Let's shift gears to a bizarre case from 1954 at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. A man arrives on an international flight, well-dressed, fluent in several languages, carrying a briefcase and a passport from a country that doesn't exist. Toward. Customs officials are confused. The passport looks real, stamps, seals, everything, but there's no such place as Tord. The man insists Tord is in Europe, near the French-Spanish border. He's been traveling for business for years. He even pulls out maps and points to Andorra, saying, "There, that's where Tord is." But why is it labeled wrong? Things get weirder. The company he says he works for exists, but they've never heard of him. The hotel he claims to have a reservation at? No record. Authorities put him in a secure hotel room overnight, with guards outside. By morning, he's gone, vanished, without leaving the room. No exit, no explanation, and no trace. Some say he was a time traveler, or from a parallel universe where Tord was real. Others call it an elaborate hoax, but to this day, there's no solid evidence either way. Just a mystery with no ending. Now let's head to Liverpool, England, where there's an ordinary-looking street called Bold Street. Nothing fancy, just shops, people, traffic. Except for one thing: people keep slipping back in time there. One story involves a man named Frank who was walking to a bookstore in the early 1990s. As he turned a corner, everything changed. The cars were old-fashioned. The street signs looked like they were from the 1950s. Even the people were dressed differently. He figured maybe he'd walked onto a movie set. But when he got to the bookstore, it was no longer a bookstore. It was a shop called Crips, which hadn't existed since 1958. He blinked, looked around, and suddenly, he was back in the present. The street, the cars, the people, all modern again. And he's not the only one. Over the years, multiple people, locals, tourists, even police officers, have reported the same thing. Stepping onto Bold Street and suddenly being transported into a past era for just a few minutes, then snapping back. Whatever's happening there, it keeps happening. Now, before you write all this off as just quirky old legends, these stories aren't stuck in the past. You've got Reddit threads, forums, and modern-day accounts of people who swear they've experienced time slipping or glitching. One woman wrote about standing in a kitchen and hearing her mother talking in the next room. Except her mother had died years ago. She walked through the doorway and for a split second, saw her childhood home as it had looked decades ago. Then it was gone. Back to reality. Another man said he walked down a familiar street and passed a shop that hadn't existed in over 20 years. His jaw dropped when he realized he was the only person on the street. And when he turned around, the shop had vanished. They don't have proof, just stories, but hundreds of them. And they all say the same thing: it felt real. Too real to be a dream. Too specific to be imagination. Is time really fixed? Or is it something we just experience in a certain way because we have to? Maybe our brains are tuned to one timeline, one direction, but every so often, something slips. Maybe it's like a record skipping, or a tape that rewinds for just a second. Some scientists entertain theories about quantum mechanics, parallel realities, or dimensional overlaps. No hard proof, of course, but it opens a door. Because if time isn't as linear as we think, then what else is possible? Could déjà vu be more than a mental glitch? Could dreams be bleed-throughs from other timelines? And if people really are stepping into other times, what does that mean for us? If you've ever walked into a room and felt something shift, heard an echo of a memory that wasn't yours, Or seen a place change in a way you just couldn't explain? Maybe you felt it too. Drop your story in the comments. We want to know. And be honest, this is a safe space for the strange and unexplained. Like, subscribe, and share with your fellow mystery lovers. Because this world is way weirder than most people want to believe, and we're only just getting started. Stick around for the next part of Unsolved and Unexplained Mysteries. You won't want to miss it.